Hey everybody, this is Dale with Networking Step by Step, and in today's video cheat sheet we're going to enable OSPF on an IP network. So let's look at what we're going to do. We're going to do some baseline show commands to see what the network looks like before we make any changes. Then we're going to enable OSPF on an IP network, and there's two different ways to do that, and we're going to cover both. And then we're going to do some verification show commands to see what the network looks like once we've finished our changes. Let's look at the topology. We're going to be configuring OSPF and bringing up neighbor adjacencies between router 1 and 2 over this link, and between 2 and 4 between this link. So let's go ahead and get started. Router 1, let's do a show IP OSPF neighbor to see if we're running OSPF across between router 1 and 2, and we're not. So let's go down and look at what it is we're going to configure. Now there's two general ways to enable OSPF on an IP network. There's the network statement that you can do underneath the process ID, which is what we're going to do here first. And then another way to do it is going specifically underneath the interface and telling the interface you're going to be in this particular process ID in this particular area. But first, like I said, we're going to do the network statements underneath the process ID. Now you may notice that I've done this two different ways, even underneath the process ID. On router 1, I'm going to do a network statement for the specific IP address that's on the interface between router 1 and 2. And that's what this reverse mask here of 0.0.0.0. It says whatever interface has that specific IP right there, run OSPF across it and put it in area 1. Now on router 2, I'm using the network statement as a little bit more generic, where I'm saying any interfaces that belongs to 12.12.12.0 through 255, that's what this reverse mask says, any interface, run OSPF across it and put it in area 1. Now in our case, it's only the interface that goes back to router 1, but if you had multiple interfaces on your network that was out of this particular /24, then it would try to put all those interfaces in OSPF in area 1. I prefer this method right here because it just specifically grabs the interface with that IP and there's no accidents and no bleeding through. So let's put those commands both on router 1 and router 2, and we'll see if the adjacencies come up. And actually what we're going to do is we're going to move on and try to bring up OSPF between routers 4 and 2. Once again, on router 4, I chose the specific address of 24.24.24.4 with that specific mask to be in area 0. So let's put that on router 4. And then on the other side, this is the new way that I mentioned earlier. The network statement is more the traditional way of getting an interface into OSPF, and if you have newer iOS rev levels, this is another way that you can do it. You go under the interface, not underneath the process ID, and you tell the interface, look, you're going to be part of OSPF process ID 2 and you're going to be in area 0. So let's see if these two can mix and match, because on one side I'm using the traditional method of the network statement, on the other side I'm using the newer way of doing it underneath the interface. Alright, so while that's thinking about it, let's go back to router 1 to see if our adjacency came up between router 1 and router 2. And as you can see out of this command out of this output right here, it already has. But I'm going to do a show IP OSPF neighbor, and sure enough I have a neighbor to router 2, and we're up and we're full and we've exchanged routes. So let's go back and look at router 2 to see if its adjacency has come up to router 4. And it has. There's the neighbor ID of 4. So those are the two different ways that you can bring up OSPF adjacencies with the network statement or the interface command. I hope this has been helpful, and we'll see you next time.